What's up, fam? I hope everybody's blessed today and welcome you to the Hope TV. I'm certainly appreciative to you for being a part of our family. I want to thank you for logging on to the Hope TV today. We have some incredible programming for you today. I'm so excited and so appreciative to each of you for your support. I mean, listen, we started this platform on March 19th with our first series entitled Pastoring in a Pandemic. We were on the front end of trying to create some content that would connect with our membership, and it's just expanded incredibly. And from March 19th until today, we've been blessed significantly to now have 34 programs on our network that are in production, on air, or in development. And in just a little over 2 months, we've been blessed to have over 10 million views through our cumulative platforms. I want to thank you for your support. It means the world to us here at the Hope TV. If you've not yet followed us on all things social media, please take a moment now and you can follow us. You can follow Hope TV on Instagram and on Twitter at the Hope TV, on YouTube and on Facebook. It certainly will mean the world to us. And if you're watching through Apple TV, Roku TV, Twitch, if you're part of the Amazon family, if you're part of YouTube, if you're part of Facebook, if you're watching through Periscope or the House of Hope Atlanta app, the edwasmith.org website, or the House of Hope website, however you're viewing, thank you for your viewership. It means the world to us. So please follow us on all things social media and help us to spread the word. Also, if you're following through a medium that will allow you to subscribe or to like or to share a comment, please do so now. It helps us tremendously with our algorithms as we're trying to provide a daily dose of aspects of faith and family and finances and fitness, our faculties, fellowship, and then interject some fun along the way. So again, thank you for tuning in to the Hope TV. I'm especially excited today because this is one of our flagship programs, one of our oldest programs here on the Hope TV. It's called Single in the City, and it's for those who are 40 and under, and I'm excited about it. This program has really grown tremendously, and it's averaging about 50,000 viewers per program through our cumulative platforms. I'm excited about that, and it means a lot to have bright and thoughtful and progressive and insightful singles to come and to share and just to bring some uplift and some empowerment. So if you know someone who's single under 40, and even if they're not single under 40, I still think today's broadcast will be a blessing even if you're not under 40, but it's going to be incredible. We've got some incredible people and an incredible panel who's going to be engaged in conversation today. So please subscribe, comment, share that link right now. If you can pause right now and share that link with about 5 people to let them know that Single in the City is on the airwaves right now. Go ahead, share that link. Please do so to help us to get the word out. I'm going to introduce our guests. I appreciate all of them. It's a little different panel today, but it's going to be powerful nonetheless, and some incredible topics have been selected today for our discussion. First of all, I'm going to start with one young lady that I've known all of her life. One of our panelists, I've known her entire life. She's a pastor. I've seen her grow. I've seen her just develop into a preacher. She's going to tell part of her story, so I'm not going to tell the whole story. But I just appreciate her for being able to serve with her, to watch her grow and develop in ministry. And that's Pastor Jennifer Carter. Hello, Pastor. How are you today?
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
God bless you. Thank you for being a part as well. And of course, the next person, I've known this young man since he was a teenager in Middle Georgia, growing up, and I've seen him love preaching and come to the church with his brother to sit in back of the church when I was pastoring in Macon. I've seen his growth, seen his development, and talked to him and prayed through him his initial sermon. And now he's in Mobile, Alabama. He's going to tell part of his story. I'm so glad to have Pastor Trey Woolfolk with us. What's up, Trey? How you doing, bro?
What's up, Pastor? Thank you so much for having me on today.
Glad to have you as well. And last but certainly not least, a young man who is a native of the Delaware, Philadelphia area. Met him when he was 18 years of age when he came to Morehouse as a student, and have been blessed to witness his journey, been a part of that journey, and so honored and so happy to have him here. He's the pastor of the House of Hope Macon, Dr. J.C. Howard. Dr. J.C., what's up, brother?
What's up, Dr. Smith? It's good to be on the line, man. Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have all of you here, Pastor Connor, Pastor Trey, and Dr. Howard. So happy to have all of you here with us today. So we're going to begin. I want you to just kind of tell your story, your journey from birth to where you are now. You know, when you start preaching, some of your academics, what's important to you in terms of ministry. So I'm going to start with you, Dr. Howard, since you were the last one that was introduced. Just tell us your journey, your story from Philadelphia, from Delaware to where you are right now.
Yeah, so I was born and pretty much reared in Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. Lived in Philadelphia for a while before I transitioned to Morehouse College when I was 17, 18 years old. And tri-state area. I'm a tri-state area boy, northern boy. And so I matriculated through Morehouse College once I left Delaware, once I graduated high school. And I had no idea that the Lord would really just open doors for me to go to that institution, that lighthouse on the hill, lighthouse on the red clay hills of Georgia, where men are begotten, Morehouse College. And Morehouse College was probably one of the most formidable and exceptional experiences of my entire life. I probably wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for professors and intellectuals that helped shape my mind theologically and in a secular fashion at Morehouse College. And then after which I was able to attend Princeton Theological Seminary there in Princeton, New Jersey. And so it was an interesting dynamic going from an all black context to an all white context. And I'm sure that we'll jump into that a little bit further. And so did well at Princeton, excelled exceptionally at Princeton Seminary. And then my journey took me to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where I served under Bishop C.E. Glover there as youth and young adult pastor. Got called to my first church there in Dania Beach, Florida. St. Ruth Baptist Church, and I was able to give leadership for the Lord. Spoke to Dr. Smith, and Dr. Smith, who's been a mentor of mine since I got to college. When I was in college, I was a youth pastor for Bishop Wiley Jackson, and I was a youth pastor there at the Gospel Tabernacle Church, both locations. And but I would, right after the second service at the main location, I would run back out to Decatur, and I would go right there to H.F. Shepherd, and I would catch the 12 noon service, the last service of the day, there at the House of Hope, formerly known as the Greater Travelers Rest Baptist Church. And I would go there and just sit under Dr. Smith's preaching, and which helped me so much during my college matriculation. And so Dr. Smith called and said, "Hey, man, I need somebody to do the work there in Macon, Georgia, man, at our Macon, Georgia church, at our church plant there in Macon." And I was just honored. I was honored, and I'm grateful. And it's been a phenomenal journey. It's been absolutely incredible. We're doing well in Macon, Georgia. Shout out to the House of Hope Macon Church. We love you all very much, and we're grateful to God for each and every one of you. And so I try to put it succinctly. That's my package.
Outstanding, man. Appreciate you. And I love that plaque you got on the wall, man. Great for turning the whole
Yes,
world.
sir. Yes, sir. Right.
Yeah, we got somebody else with something on their wall too.
We don't know what that. It looked like scribble.
I never liked candy canes, man. I never, even as a kid. Yeah, and we also have Pastor Jennifer Connor who's here, and I want her to come. Just tell us your story. I can tell it, but I want people to hear from you as well. So just tell your story, Pastor Connor.
So I'm basically just a church baby from Macon, Georgia. I'm proud of my 478 area code. I'm glad to be from Macon Central Charger. So if there are any Central Chargers watching, y'all, just post something in the comments. Let me know you are here. I grew up in the church. My father was a pastor. I grew up in the church that Dr. Smith came out of, Macedonian Missionary Baptist Church, where Eddie D. Smith Sr. is the pastor. And so I grew up there. My father was also a pastor. And I had a love for knowledge and just a love for the biblical text very early. At the age of 9, my mother, she saw that I was picking up all the Matthew Henry, because back then, in terms of resources, we had Matthew Henry and we had a couple of others. And so I was interested in all of it. I became like a Bible nerd. And soon after, I acknowledged a call to preach. I said, "Daddy, I'm called to preach." And my dad said, "No, you're not." He said, "You're going to get married. You're going to have a family," because he saw being in ministry full time as a sacrifice, that a woman would sacrifice having those other things, having family and having relationships. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, I'm sure, as we continue on. So he was like, no, you're not. You're not called to preach. So he gave me a stack of books and he said, once you read these, come back and tell me if you're called to preach and we can talk. So I brought him back all 10 of the books. And some of you may know which books they were. It was the Warren Wiersbe series, the Be Mature. Somebody know about that. Be mindful or be spiritual. So I read all 10 of those, came back, and he allowed me to preach my initial sermon. About 4 or 5 years later, Dr. Smith came to my initial sermon. And Dr. Smith, I want to tell you publicly, I appreciate the fact that you supported me as a woman in ministry when it was not popular in the Missionary Baptist Church. So I did my initial sermon at high school, then matriculated on to Mercer University, where I received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Christianity with a minor in Greek and Business Administration. Graduated from there, went to Emory University, Candler School of Theology, where I received my MDiv. And all along my journey, one thing has remained consistent, that I love ministry, I love people, and I love seeing people grow and seeing people come into an understanding of who they are and their relationship with God. So that's my story.
Absolutely, and pursuing your PhD now.
Oh,
So
yes.
excited about that. And, I was blessed to. A lot of people don't know this story, but Pastor Connor's mother, aunt, uncle, and father all taught me in Sunday school. They were my Sunday school teachers really from the time I was probably 6, probably till I was 8, 17. So all my Sunday school teachers, maybe except with the exception of one person. So all of my whole formation, her family, her aunt, her mom, her dad, and her uncle, Brenda, Janice, JW, and Clarence. Those were my Sunday school teachers. So a lot of what I know about the Bible, really, formatively speaking, came through them. Also, her dad was the one who made Andre go out with me for the first time on our first date together, December 11, 1988. So if nothing else, I'm connected to her. Has nothing to do with her, all due to my deference to JC Connor, because if it wasn't for him, I would never got hooked up with Andre. So shout out
Yes.
to Pastor JW Connor, who's on as well. Love you, man. All
Yes.
right, Trey, tell us your story. Pastor Trey Wolfalk, tell us your story, sir.
Well, I was born in Macon, Georgia, January 1st, 1984, to Beverly and Willie. Went to Westside High School, the best high school in Middle Georgia. And interestingly enough, Pastor Smith, I was visiting Beulah Land with my foremost sixth grade teacher, Sabrina McGee, and it was listening to you preach, like you said early in the introduction. We were sitting in the back and just listening to you preach that I heard the voice of God tell me that's what I wanted you to do, and had no idea what God had in store. I was 13, 14 years of age at the time, and wouldn't even know that at the age of 25, in the very building that I heard that original voice, I will be introduced as the new children's and youth pastor at Beulah Land Bible Church. And so that's like one of the crazy things about my journey, is that where I heard the voice is actually where I got my first full-time ministry job. My ministry began to, get acclaim and other things like that at that time. I also went on to graduate from Mercer University in Macon, Georgia. I tried to get away, but the Lord wouldn't let me get out of the city limits until now. And so was able to serve in ministry, been in ministry since 2005, September 11, as you shared earlier. I remember the day. It was a week away from my initial sermon where you called me in my dorm room at Mercer University. And I was so shocked. And I remember you taking just the time to not only listen to me preach it out loud, but to give me pointers and things. I never will forget that that time that you gave that you didn't have to give. And so, of course, God blessed me to be the youth pastor of Beulah Land Bible Church for some 10 years. And God allowed our ministry, children and youth ministry, to do some remarkable, revolutionary things that I think have left an indelible mark on the children and youth ministry of Middle Georgia. And so that season abruptly ended last year in January. And I was seeking God about where to go. And the interesting part about where I am now, of course, when that job ended, I put a bunch of resumes out trying to get somewhere. and all of them said no. And I got a call to come preach for a friend of mine's father in Mobile, Alabama. And after just one message, he asked me, was I interested in becoming an assistant pastor? And so from that one time, we've come all the way from Macon, Georgia to Mobile, Alabama. It's been a blessing. In that time also, I've also completed my master's degree. The rest of my brothers and sisters, they have doctorate degrees or in the making. I still have my nursing degree, so to speak. But I'm just grateful for the journey that I have, and God has just blessed our church, the Aimwell Baptist Church in Mobile, Alabama. It's been a journey. It's been a great journey to this point, and I'm grateful. Just grateful for that.
Outside of it, this is outstanding. Another 478. All you guys, either from Macon or connected with Macon. Pastor Carl, let me ask you a question. I think it's a great segue, particularly, and I want to ask it of each of you, that all of you will learn and train and very studious and very astute. We're living in some times now, and I heard Lance Watson say something last year that was remarkable. He said we're now living in a generation, talking about his generation, I think, and mine somewhat too, where the things that we learned in seminary has prepared us for a world that no longer exists. I want you to press that a little bit because we're a little older, but he made that statement. It was very startling. And Fred Haynes and I, we talked about it. But I want to see, how has your experiences been, particularly, from Mercer to Emory to where you are now? And I'm going to ask it of each of you. Has seminary, has your ministry and your educational pursuits prepared you for where we are now in this COVID world? Have you benefited from it? Have you not? I want to see, how has education helped you, or have you, or having you, or is it making you to relearn something, or learn some things, or study some things? How has your education prepared you for now?
So what I'll say is definitely my experience at Candler has prepared me for now. Mainly the piece about self-care, because I was not exposed to self-care. I was a Black church baby. And in the African-American church, you're called give Lord your all, give till you can't give anymore, sacrifice. And so in seminary, I learned you can't give if you don't have anything left. So in our pastoral care courses, I learned balance, that you need to take a break. And so if nothing else, those courses, the pastoral care course, have taught me, number one, to care for myself, but then also to care for the people that I serve in this pandemic. Because people don't really care about our eloquence, or whether or not we quote Bart, or whether we quote Tillich, or, they're more concerned about, what do you have to say for where I am right now? And do you as a pastor care about me and my journey? So I think pastoral care was one of the greatest contributions of my theological education. And then secondly, we took a class called Leadership and Formation, where we learned that as a senior pastor or as an executive pastor, you need to know how to read a balance sheet. You need to know the business of the church if you're going to effectively lead the church as well. So I can say those two courses stand out for me as courses that help. And then I don't want to be long-winded, but systematic theology has helped me, because when you talk about issues of theodicy, why do good things happen to bad people, why do bad things happen to good people? Those tools that we learn in systematic theology give us the language and the semantics to be able to teach and to preach in tight spaces and difficult spaces. So yeah, those will be some of the courses I think that have prepared me for where we are.
Dr. Howard, I want to ask you the same question.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if I would go as far as to say that the seminary is essentially preparing us for a world that no longer exists, because the chief responsibility of the seminary is to form your theological mind, and to help inform your theological mind and help shape your theology. So that's the chief purpose of seminary. But I will say it, but I understand that concept, because there are some things in regards to seminary or seminary praxis that's outdated, or that it's just not in touch with modern day reality. Shout out to Candler. I am a Candler alumni now, to God be the glory. So shout out to Candler. And I know that Jen, you got that experience at Candler, but there are a lot of seminaries that don't touch business. There are a lot of seminaries that don't teach you how to, when you get your first church or you get a church and you're in the middle of a construction project or a building project or building fundraising. There are a lot of seminaries that don't really get into that. I think that they're becoming a little bit more conscious now. But when I was coming through seminary, and I'm sure Dr. Smith, when you were coming through seminary, those things really were taboo. Maybe not taboo, but they just weren't talked about. They weren't taught. It was systematic theology. It was Old Testament. It was New Testament, right? But practical theology did prepare. Practical theology did prepare in a sense that we took some courses on pastoring in grief, pastoring grieving people, pastoring traumatic people that are going through trauma. And I think that now more than ever, we're living in a season and in an era of trauma. We're all traumatized. Yes. What we watched on CNN the past 2 nights has traumatized people. What we saw George Floyd go through just a little under a week ago in his passing, rest in peace, is traumatizing. And so we're living in an era of trauma. And it's not just trauma that's happening. It's not just trauma that's happening directly to the person. It's mass trauma. We're being traumatized through the airwaves. We're being traumatized through what we read, through what we see. It's so sickening that you could hardly watch the news. That's how traumatic it is. And we're experiencing that on the local level and on the national level. We're being traumatized about through what's happening from the White House. This is traumatic. We don't know what in the world is going to happen. And so those practical theology classes that help you deal with people who are grieving, help you deal with people who are going through trauma, self-care, as Pastor Carter has alluded to, those are extremely helpful. But we do need to be conscious in terms of being academicians. We do need to be conscious that there's a lot more that goes into pastoral work, particularly when you're talking about pastoring in a pandemic. When you have to shut your church down, what do you do then? What do you do? What do you do when you can't fill the pews and your sanctuary becomes the studio? What do you do if your media department isn't built out to even do that kind of work, right? And so we need to be having these kind of more conscious conversations in seminaries and through seminary, and I think across the board, just in church, period, and helping prepare leaders and pastoral leaders for seasons that we're going through right now.
That's awesome. Pastor Trey?
I would say, Pastor Smith, I would err on the same side as my brother. I don't think seminary prepared us for such a time as this. I think I went to New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary, which is a Southern Baptist affiliate, and to say that they prepared me for that side of it, no. I just got to be honest. But one of the classes I did not think would be as useful to me that has become very useful for me is my spiritual formation class. We studied Richard Foster's book, Celebration of Discipline, and one of the statements he made was that the reason why Christianity is a mile wide and an inch deep is because we don't have any discipline. And one of the things that I have had to put in place since COVID has affected the way we do church, because now we're having to mass produce things. Most of us are pre-recording weeks in advance, which means their workload is quadrupled on the week of your production, and not to mention if you're running a network like you, and so one of the things that I've had to really go back into is meditating. One of the things, and those levels of discipline, sitting down, praying, having that quiet time, and it's really a way of replenishing yourself, because a lot of us end up doing ministry on an empty tank. Because we haven't taken the time to refill ourselves with those disciplines that are designed to keep us from burnout. And that's one of the things that I've had to juggle during this time. And my spiritual formation class has done that also. I think also one of the exercises we did in our spiritual formation classes has also helped me. It was basically a self-awareness exercise that we did in our class. Basically, our professor put us in a circle and had everybody to go around the room and tell you something that they saw in you. And the idea behind it was for you to also see how you impact the world around you, but also for you to get a good grasp of who you are. And I think in this season, especially for a person like myself who's having to step up in a role and take lead on a lot of things, it helped me because it made me self-aware enough to know hey, you can handle this, you can do that. And I think if more than anything for me, that was the most practical take home thing that I had from seminary that helps this time. Of course, theological classes and all of that comes into play every time we stand. However, the most practical thing for me has been my spiritual formation, that self awareness and setting aside that time to as Pastor Connor so eloquently said, self care, and that is our responsibility. I think to ourselves to make sure we're fresh so that we can be fresh to our people.
So I've heard that how some of the things benefited you in terms of self-care and theology and grief and trauma, self-care, self-awareness. But since we're talking about single and city and those who are under 40, and I think Pastor Dr. Howard, you mentioned it earlier, in terms of COVID, technology, the role of millennials, because I know you all have done some millennial types of ministry. Do you think that seminary prepared you specifically for that demographic, or for times of disaster? Because nobody's ever been through a pandemic before that's global. So I know we're all trying to flesh through this. Those books are going to be written after this. But in terms of singles and millennials, did your theological formations help you in terms of meeting that particular demographic? I asked that for a reason. How has your seminary helped you, your learning helped you to minister and to reach millennials?
Not in any way, shape, or form. I mean, we were millennials going through seminary, and so one thing that was lacking, particularly at Princeton, I think Princeton did a phenomenal job in terms of helping you to create theological constructs. Even race constructs, critical race theory. Princeton did a great job at doing that. But one thing that lacked was teaching you how to be intergenerational. And I think that was a significant misstep for a lot of people, because we had to learn intergenerational ministry or intergenerational praxis from people like yourself, or from people who pastor intergenerational churches, people who are intentional. One thing that I've learned from you specifically is the intentionality behind being intergenerational, right? The intentionality of understanding that you might be preaching to 5 generations in one service. And so you have to understand how to be practical. You can't be, I mean, you want to, when you graduate seminary, it's funny, when you graduate seminary, and I know some people do this even when they get their doctorate, you want to preach what you've learned. You want to show people that you're learning, that you can break down some Kierkegaard and some Tillich, and some Gutierrez, right? You want to go from liberation theology to systematic theology, and you want to, and people are, and I think Dr. Connor, soon to be Dr. Connor, she has touched on that. She touched on that initially in regards to this understanding of being theological, trying to flex your theological muscle. But people are saying, Doc, I don't know what that means. I have to look that up in church. Please, I don't have time to listen to the word and be on dictionary.com trying to figure out what words you're talking. So this understanding of being practical. And so we've had to learn that kind of praxis from individuals like yourself, from individuals who have been intentional, pastors like Joe Walker and some other individuals who are, Dr. Bryant, who have shown that there has to be an intentionality behind intergenerational ministry. And so I don't want to just hone in on millennials, even though that's the target. That was the target of my doctoral work. But I mean, because now I'm shifting focus to Z, because Z is in the building, and if the millennial demographic, if we don't become formidable in our spiritual formation, shout out to Trey, in our spiritual formation, in our theological practice, some of my research discovered that because of the declining demographic of church participants from the boomer and the Gen X generation, we think that millennials just don't like church or don't go to church, and that's not the case. The case is many of them were never there to begin with. And so we have a target of a millennial demographic that can be reached, that needs to be reached if we're going to really see Z in our pews. So we have to be intergenerationally minded. And like I said, I'm starting to shift my attention to Z. I need to know what's going on with Z, just as much as I need to know what's going on with the millennial demographics. So intergenerational ministry is something that I had to seek out, and not something that was necessarily handed to me in my seminary courses.
That's great.
So,
Pastor Garner, Pastor Trey.
yeah, I can jump in there. I agree with you, Dr. Howard, 100%. Seminary did not prepare me to work with singles or millennials. I had to make the mistakes. I don't know about anybody else's journey, but I served as a pastor of singles, young adults. I also had children and youth, and I had staff pastors that managed those areas in both Tampa and then in Memphis. So I was in Tampa at Bible-Based Fellowship, and then in Memphis at Mississippi Boulevard. And I made the mistakes. I'll never forget. I had this huge singles event. I thought it was going to be lit. I thought it was going to be awesome. And I invited all the singles, and the 60-year-old singles came and the 20-year-old singles. And I never saw the 20-year-olds again because they did not want to go to a singles event where their grandmother was there. And I didn't realize, I didn't realize the demographics of my church, that I had this huge gap between the ages of my singles. And so I learned that I needed to focus on affinity groups. Okay, if you're a single that likes jazz, I can provide this type of experience. Or if you're a single person who likes to mingle, I can provide this type of experience. And what began to happen is the groups that could be in the same space began to create this organic community. And so the 40s and the 50s would come to the events that catered to what they needed. And then the ones that were younger began to develop their own community. So I learned in practice. I learned by making mistakes. So the pedagogy of my seminary training wasn't what taught me, but the praxis did of ministry. And so that's how I learned how to develop a rhythm for this type of ministry. And then also I think about how we address the pandemic as a staff. Hats off to Dr. Smith for coming out early and leading us and sharing with us that we needed a multi-generational communication plan, because we had seniors, 1,200 seniors, who don't know anything about Snapchat, TikTok, Twitch, who don't know anything about Facebook. And so we had to call them. We had to do calling posts for that generation to let them know what we were doing in this pandemic. But then we have the younger generation. They have their own communication schedule with our youth pastor and Pastor Smith, DeMarcus Smith. He guides them through strategies of keeping them engaged that relate to them on their level and in their age demographic. So I think what the pandemic has taught us is how to communicate effectively with our churches. I can speak from the place of executive pastor or membership care. We had to change the way that we communicated. We had to be more reassuring. We had to provide people with hope. When we send emails, we always make sure that there's a word of hope. And to those who are administrative pastors, make sure that your system for keeping your church data is up to date, because that was critical in us being able to communicate with our congregation. If we had old email addresses, nobody would have known that Dr. Smith was preaching online. So I think, if nothing else, the pandemic is teaching us how to be more intentional, but then also how to be more thoughtful about what churches do in crisis and how we can communicate effectively in crisis across generations.
Great. Pastor Trey.
Seminary did not teach us anything or prepare us for that matter. I, like my brothers and sisters, have had to learn an alternative school, so to speak, after the fact. I was blessed to be a youth pastor and was in a youth ministry for the first 12, 13 years of my 14-year preaching ministry. And it gave me a real eyewitness account of seeing the millennial mentality as it relates to ministry. And so I discovered that the millennials weren't really responding well. My youth weren't responding well when I stood up and took a text and had the 3 points and all of that stuff. But it was more of a conversational thing. One of the things that I learned as a youth pastor is that they did not care about none of the theological weights that we can lift when we're preaching. But they really cared about it being simplistic in a way, and also ministering to them where they are. And so because of that, I had to learn in that regard, which has also helped me in my approach now during this pandemic, like you said, because when you're ministering to millennials, they really don't care about a lot of the stuff that 10, 15 years ago in preaching mattered. They care for a conversational style to where they feel like they can leave and apply whatever they just heard. Yeah.
You know, this has been a great conversation, and to get into your minds and your experiences and things you've gleaned. And I kind of want to I want to press into that a little bit more, because this is Single in the City, and it's for those who are under 40, and most of the viewers have never been to seminary. Some of the scholars that you quoted, they don't know anything about them. But what they are interested in is, how have you navigated practically as a single person in the pandemic? How are you staying sane? How are you using your time? What are you doing, not as a pastor, but as a single person under 40 in this pandemic, to navigate this difficult space in these uncharted waters? So I want to hear from you. What are you doing practically? How are you struggling? How are you maintaining your sanity? How are you keeping hope? How are you using your time? So I want to hear from your heart, not your seminary, not Princeton, not New Orleans, not
Take the preacher
Mercer,
off.
not Emory. I want to, for the singles who are watching under 40,
Yeah.
move your clergy collar and tell them, what are you doing to navigate this space, and maintain sanity? Because I think that's very, very important. It was good we started on that front end, but I want to hear from you, just the real deal. How you navigate through this time. I want all of you to answer that, please.
My.
I'll I'll start first. I'll
All right.
start it out because I had a hard time with this season. If I can be honest, the first 2 weeks, I've shared this with a lot of singles. The first 2 weeks of the pandemic, I was angry because I had this strategic plan. I had a vision plan for my personal ministry, but also for the ministries that I serve. And I had everything laid out. I was excited about it. And the pandemic for me said, none of this is going to happen, at least not how you envisioned it. So the first few weeks, I did nothing. I did my work, but absent of my work, I did not. I've shared this with a couple people. Y'all don't judge me. I have a unit. That's your hair. I have a lace front unit. And I did not put my unit on the first few weeks because I didn't feel motivated. I just felt like, you know what? This is hard. And so around week 3, I decided, you know what? You can continue to build in this pandemic. You can continue to be productive. And so I started doing things that I had more focus and just more time to do that I had not done prior to the pandemic. So I started organizing a lot of my files. I started thinking about, okay, I can't do this, but what can I do? And so I made my pivot kind of around the 3rd week. And I started riding my bike. That was huge. I ride 3 miles a day on my bike. And that became my centering exercise and my moment to kind of pull everything together because it's stressful to be in a pandemic. So as a single person, what I've done is I've created spaces within my day to do things that I couldn't do before. Okay, riding my bike. I should have done something about my waistline a long time ago. So I think the pandemic presented me with this opportunity to deal with things that I couldn't deal with because I was so busy. I think the church in general enforces this whole idea of grind culture, that you got to work and work and work and work until you pass out. But in this season, what the pandemic is teaching me is I don't have to work until I pass out. I can do what I can today and save the rest for tomorrow. And so for me as a single person, it was hard at first. I wasn't able to go down to Macon and see my mom and dad and see some of my people who pour into me. And so I didn't have that. I'm an extrovert. And so I enjoyed fellowship time and hugging people. And so all of that was hard for me starting out. But the 3rd week, I made my pivot. I've caught up on all my Luke Cage episodes on Netflix. And so that has been a blessing to me. I have caught up on my Insecure episodes. And so I'm finding ways in my pivot to catch up on stuff that I couldn't do when I was caught up in this grind culture. So that's my little story.
I'll go next. I haven't struggled at all as it relates to singleness. I don't, Pastor, if I'm not of the mindset as some singles. So I think some singles are really driven for relationships, and so I think their drive is more for likes than love. I think that a lot of people's pursuit of relationships as a single, which is why they're miserable single, is because they want the affirmation of others seeing them with somebody. I just don't subscribe to that. I'm working hard. I'm doing what I can because I'm at a place where I'm comfortable with me. Most people who are miserable single is because they can't be with themselves. You know, I've talked to people who asked me to hook them up with other friends, and I'm just tired of being by myself. And my thing to them was, if you're tired of you, then why should I hook you up with somebody else so they can be tired too? And so I'm really doing well because my mindset is, of course, and let me clarify. I do believe in relationships and all of that stuff. However, it's not a struggle because I've always had a balance and a healthy sense of self, to the place to where if I don't have it, I don't feel like I'm lacking, and now I have to make up the difference. And so the pandemic really didn't affect me socially as relates to that, because I think as a single, one of the most important things and one of the most important qualities you can have is security. And I think when people don't have that security, they always feel like they have to chase and look and all of that other stuff. And the truth is, it's because of social media. And because of that, I think people have this very false sense of what happiness is. And I think, people look at other people with cheek to cheek pictures on social media, and they're like, oh, I want that. And the truth is, if you really understood it in its entire context, people's relationship on social media is not what it posts to be. I hope you understand what I'm saying. That is not as real as it appears on that picture. And so, because I am not inundated or feel like I'm lacking in that regard, I'm not struggling, dude. I'm comfortable. If anything, I'm probably working probably too much. But as it relates to my singleness, it's not a struggle because I feel like I'm a whole individual without having somebody in my life.
That's good. Dr. Howard?
I'm sorry, Dr. Smith, did you want to?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, so just if, keep it 100, man. Like, listen, and I'm glad Pastor Connor. People struggling, man. Okay, people are really struggling, and they want to get out. That's why we see folks out here in these streets going in. They want to get out. These restrictions have been rolled back, and people are in the streets because folk have been wanting to get out, and particularly single folk, get back out and mingle, get back out and brunch, and do what you got to do. Listen, I initially was struggling as well. Now, the reality is, because you have, particularly when you're overseeing a ministry, when you're a pastor, you have to start moving. And that was the first thing. When we realized, okay, we have to phase out, boom, 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 I realized, and it's crazy because you would think that in a pandemic that the volume of your work would go down, but as Trey alluded to earlier, it went up exponentially. You're having to push out so much content in such a short amount of time. You're doing this recording, and yet while you're doing this recording, you're preparing for another recording. And so grind season was real. But I agree with Jim, because what initially happened with me was almost the opposite, that I started kind of going into overdrive so much that I realized, okay, I'm not going to the gym anymore, which is something that I very much love to do. I'm kind of a gym rat, something that really gives me therapy. I'm not going to the gym anymore. I'm not meditating because I'm rushing, trying to push out this outline so I can get this recording done, trying to get the praise team, make sure they're corralled and everybody's in place, media, boom, boom, boom. So I was doing, my energy was being channeled, but I don't know if it was. I don't know if it was healthy. My energy was being channeled, but I don't know if it was healthy. I was going to bed tired, waking up tired, but still moving, because I realized the gravity of having to really produce content to keep people engaged and figure out how we're going to do that. But then I made me a pivot as well, Pastor Carter. I made me a good little pivot as well. I made a LeBron pivot. I made a LeBron pivot because what I did was. I realized, I said, wait a minute, I'm not working out. I'm not probably eating the best way I should eat. I'm moving. I'm moving. I need to really outline my day. I need to slow down. I need to do a little bit more strategic thinking instead of just go, go, go. And so that was one of the reasons why we started our Hope Fitness recordings. I said, I need to start working out again. And people were laughing at me. I don't care if y'all laugh at me, but folks were laughing at that. They said, Pastor, why are you up there? You just let the fitness ministry work out. You don't have to be up there working out with them. I say, yes, I do, man. I need it. I need it for my mental stability, for real. And so finding ways in a healthy manner to channel my energy. Because let's be real, let's be all the way 100. When pandemic hit, we've been on shelter in place for about like 3 months now. That's quarter of a year. For a quarter of a year, we've been shelter in place. The church has been shut down. We're preaching to a camera. It has been difficult. And I've communicated to my people how difficult it is. I'm a talk back preacher. I like hearing people talk back to me. And it's been extremely difficult not having people in the sanctuary, but I had to find ways to, in a healthy fashion, to channel my energy and not just burn all my energy through work. Dr. Cynthia Hale, shout out to her. She liberated me significantly. She said you have 24 hours in a day. You have 8 hours for sleep and rest. You have 8 hours for work, and then you have 8 hours to do what you need to do. Do something that you want to find to do. You have 8 hours. So you can use that 8 hours to get after your new business. You can get after destiny. You can start that YouTube page. You can write that song. Whatever it is, you can use 3 to 4 hours to do that. You can use a couple hours to read. Then you can catch up on your, listen, I was paying for Netflix for 4 years and never used it, Dr. Corner. 4 years, man. I'm into Netflix now, man. That's my late night move, man. I go to my Netflix, I watch me a little Ozark, a little Narcos, whatever you into. And so you have to find ways to creatively channel your energy. I had to get back into working out, even if it was working out from home. I went to Academy, got me some weights at home, because if that's something that I was doing pre-pandemic, I still need to be stabilized in the things that I do that help me channel my energy. And not only that, let's be clear, let me just add one more thing. I had to learn how to use social media for my ministry purposes and what I needed to do in terms of ministry, in terms of presence, and so on and so forth. But I had to fall back. I had to fall back from social media because the thirst is real. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. People are in the house. They looking at, listen, y'all looking at me like y'all know what I'm talking about. People are in the inbox, in the DM. And I said, wait a minute, okay, let me just pull back up off of this. Sisters, they getting bored. They dressing up at the house. They posting, pictures. And I'm like, well, let me get up off here. Let me get up off here before I end up in somebody's DM. The devil is a liar. So I had to, you got to channel that energy. You have to find ways to channel that energy. It's imperative. It's imperative.
Outstanding.
Dr. Smith, can I warn people about something? So the coronation bait is real. I think that a lot of people, because we're in a pandemic, are giving folks a chance that you wouldn't have given a chance if we were not in a pandemic. So I want to just caution not to get a corona bait that we won't really like after the pandemic is over. I'm just saying. That's just something that I'm hearing that people are thinking of.
Lord have mercy. Listen, we got so much to talk. This has been, we're gonna have to part 2 of this, and because I didn't get to half my questions, and I'm out of time.
It's really
listen, I need y'all to listen. What we're gonna do, we're gonna get ready. We're gonna come back and finish this conversation about dating, which is very, very important. I want to talk about patriarchy in ministry, and the integration and tearing down that wall and what that looks like. And most important, I want to talk about social justice in light of the Ahmaud Arbery case, the Breonna Taylor case, and the George Floyd case. I want to get in your perspectives about where we go from here. So I want to thank y'all for being a part. I want y'all to hold your spaces. We're going to come back. We're going to have to record part 2. Fam, this has been part 1 of Single in the City with Pastor Trey Wolfall, Pastor Jen Collar, and Dr. J.C. Howard. It's been amazing, and we're gonna have part 2 of this, and I hope that you look out for it. We're gonna close this broadcast now. But as always, remember this: if you'll be good to God, God will be good to you. Until next time, peace and stay safe.